Well, it turns out I'm not going to wait till this winter to work on the 1946. I'm really kind of itching to see whether it's going to run or not. So as you can see, I pulled the handlebars and the hood up and everything, and I got the fan shroud off so I can get the jug out of here and hopefully get that exhaust valve unstuck. I've also been spraying it with some oil over the past week or so now anyways, so. And as you can see, it's also very dirty. It's got a lot of oil and stuff built up on it, so I got to scrape that off before I pull the jug off and clean this up a little bit, so that way when it comes off, nothing falls down inside of the crankcase. So we'll get that pulled off, and I also took this magneto off today just to mess around with it, and I got some nice blue spark out of it. So the magneto is definitely good, so hopefully we can get this exhaust valve unstuck and we can get it running. Alright, I got the jug all cleaned off and everything. It took a while, but all the fins are all cleaned and seems like they should be all set, and I got around all the valve covers and stuff. Those are all set. So that way when I pull it up, junk won't fall out. And we had quite a bit, so I'll have to get that swept up later. Anyways, we'll see if we can get these bolts loose and lift the jug off the piston. Alright, we got all the nuts off for the jug, so now let's see if we can slip it up. That came off pretty easy, that's a good thing. Caught on a ring or something. Much as I hate to do that. Come on. Really don't want to snap it. There we go. Well, it had a little bit of water in it, and you can see it was sitting probably in the piston was sitting down the bottom for a while. So yeah, it came off a little tough, but should be able to clean it up with the hone a bit. And the piston doesn't look overly bad. It does have some water in it, and you can feel some grit, so that'll have to get all sprayed and cleaned up. And actually looks like it's got, I don't know how well you guys can see that. Get a flashlight. But there's rust on the inside of the block. You can see it right there on the exhaust valve camshaft. You can also see it on the connecting rod too, on the gears. So this thing had moisture in it for a while. Hopefully it's not completely gone inside. Intake doesn't look too bad. And I don't know if you can see the, well, you probably can't. I can see the oil way down in there. It doesn't look overly bad, so we'll have to see. So we'll see if we can get this exhaust valve to move, and hopefully everything else will be okay for the bottom end. Alright, well, I was able to get it to go down some when I put it in the vise, and I used a brass drift and a hammer. So I was able to get it down pretty close, which should give me enough room to push down the retainer there and get the clip out, which is what I'm shooting for, and then I can drive it up this way. And I know I'm going to need a new valve, because I'm sure you can probably see that, whether you can, it's lower on the left hand side. It is warped from me hitting it over the past couple of days now, which isn't a big deal because I got plenty more of these valves around. So let's see if we can get the clip out, and then we can drive the valve. Alright, I was able to get the valve spring and everything off, and I cleaned up the valve stem here with some 400 grit sandpaper. So I'll give it some oil, and hopefully we can get it to slip down through, and I'll hit it down with the hammer. And obviously I'm not too worried about wrecking the stem because the valve head's already bent. just snap the bottom of it off. Well, it took a while, but I finally got the exhaust valve out of this jug, as you can see. Came out in 4 pieces. One of the pieces was the one that you saw break off in the previous video. And then I had to cut the rest of the stem off that came down the bottom. And there's the stem that was in the guide. And then I had to snap the head of the valve off to finally get it out. So this morning I took and I heated up the guide and everything. Got it red hot. Tried to drive it down through, and as you can see, it just kept mushrooming out on the stem. So I cut the stem off so it was flush with the bottom of the guide, and I kept driving it down, and it wasn't budging or anything. So I snapped the head off and I turned it up, and it broke probably about 1/4 of an inch down inside of the guide. So I filled it with some oil and let it sit for a couple hours, and then I just drove it out. Probably didn't even take me a minute, and it came right out. So I don't know if it's going to focus well, but as you can see, there's a lot of buildup right there. Almost looks like flakes of metal and stuff from it pulling out, more or less likely. So anyways, I finally got that out. So I'll look around for another valve, and then I should be able to lap that in there. And as long as the guide isn't too worn out from the heating and having all that rust get pushed through there and everything, should be able to reuse it. Now, it's been a while, but we're back here again with the 1946 Gravely Brass Tag Model L. And where I left off with you guys last time, I had finished getting the exhaust valve out, and I had to put another one in. So as you can see, I have another valve in there. It's been lapped in, and it seats really nicely. It's out of a newer style one. It doesn't have the cutout in the center of the valve or anything. So that worked out good. I was also planning on pulling off the bottom end because of all the rust that was in it on the flywheel. Right there, you could probably see it was kind of bumpy, blistered rust, but it scraped off with a razor pretty good. And down on the inside, it had a little bit of goopy oil, so what I did is I pulled out the drain plug and I drained a little bit of it out, so I'm just letting it tilt up and leak out for a little while. So I'm not going to bother pulling off the bottom end because it's not as bad as I was really figuring it was going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to finish getting this jug ready to go. Unfortunately, this bolt hole here is stripped out over the exhaust manifold, but I have these 5/16 18 lock nuts, the really thin ones, and or jam nuts actually, not lock nuts. So I could stick that underneath there and it'll line up right with the hole, so that way I can get a good thread on it and I can still get my head torqued down. So that's the plan at least. So I'll finish getting the oil drained and then we can get the jug back onto the engine.